Good day to all. I am Mala Acharya. We will start with the chapter 5 Elements of Communication. This communication chapter basically deals with the communication skill in different stages of our workplace. In our professional life, we need to take care of our communication skill. So let us start with the meaning of the word communication. The word communication is derived from the Latin term communicare or communico, which means to share. To share our feelings, ideas, and thoughts with another person. Here is the definition given by Peter Little, a complete definition of communication. Communication is the process by which information is transmitted between individual or organizations so that an understanding response results. So basically, the process of communication goes through four stages. First thing is the communication is the process. Number one. Number two, information is transmitted. Number three, it is the information is transmitted between individual or organizations. Number four, an understanding response results. So whenever communication takes place, any information transmitted, there has to be a response, a reply to the transferred message. If we understand the definition this way, it will be easy for us to memorize. Basically, communication is of two types: good communication and bad communication. Here is the definition of good communication: the communication which conveys information to another effectively and efficiently is called good communication. So, effectively means whenever we are communicating with another person in the workplace, we need to have complete information about that particular work, and efficiently is the person to whom we are giving the information, the person need to understand that, and therefore we have to give lot of importance to the person who is listening to our information or message. Then only the communication will be considered as a good communication. For example, managers with good verbal, non-verbal, and written communication skills help easy sharing of information between people within a company organization to complete a work satisfactorily. So whenever the manager is having a very good communicative skill, he can make his employees understand a particular assignment very nicely so that any work can be very satisfactorily completed. Okay, so if we need to develop our communicative skill, these are the various skills which we need to improve and develop within us. Listening, we have to be first of all a good listener. Before communicating, we have to be a good listener. Then effective use of non-verbal communication, that is our body language. Whenever we are communicating, our body language communicates a lot of informations. Then clarity, whatever we speak or we are giving the information, that should be very clear. Conciseness, it should be short. The information should be given within very limited sentences. Then friendly approach, our approach, the way we speak to other people has to be very friendly in giving advice, suggestion, guidance. And also we have to be very confident in delivering the information. Then empathy, respect, positivity, motivation whenever we are communicating. We have to motivate the other person who is listening to us to give a reply, to encourage them, to encourage the listener to give an immediate reply. The number two category is bad communication. The communication which lacks proper language and complicates the understanding of the information is called bad communication. After communication, if the listener is not able to understand our language or the information which we have communicated, then that is considered bad communication. How we could know that whether it is good or bad? Basically, all kinds of bad communication, confusing communications are avoided. People avoid, turn deaf ear to this kind of communication. So if we find any person is avoiding to listen to our information, that means we need to change the way we are communicating with other person. So we need to avoid, if we want to be a good speaker or good communicator, then all these things we need to avoid whenever we are communicating with other persons. That is divided attention, criticism, dictative attitude, lack of consideration, bad temperament, misunderstandings. We have to keep always in mind that we have to avoid these things whenever we are communicating with other persons. Now coming to the communication process. How the communication process takes place. Whether it is with the electronic device or face-to-face communication or any online communication. These are the different components or the elements which plays an important role in the communication process. First is sender, encoding, channel, decoding, receiver, feedback. So these are the 6 components that plays the important role in any communication process. First of all, for any communication, there has to be a source or a sender or a speaker who collects the ideas or information to transfer to the receiver. So whenever he is collecting the ideas, he has to keep in mind, he has to select a particular language easily understood by the receiver, or any sign or symbol or any code which can be easily understood by the receiver. After encoding, after converting his ideas into this language, symbol, sign or code, he has to give importance in selection of the channel. He has to select that medium or channel which is available with the receiver. After that, he transfers the message to the receiver. And on the other hand, the receiver very attentively listens to the information given to him and he tries to convert those word, symbol, sign or code into his own thoughts. After he interprets the message, then only he is able to understand the message. After understanding of the message or the information, he feels like giving a feedback, that is a reply or an answer to the sender. After this is the feedback is the last stage of the communication process, which makes the communication complete and successful. So after giving the feedback to the sender, the communication process is considered as complete and successful. So here it has been, each of the work of each of the component has been described very briefly for better understanding. So communication process is again of 2 types, one-way communication and two-way communication. Here is the one-way communication process. One-way communication is only a part of the communication process. The sender must know whether the receiver is receiving message or not. Both sender and receiver remain dull and irresponsible towards each other during this process. The sender dominates the process. In other words, this process is also called dictator type of communication. See this diagram? Here we have only 5 components. Here the feedback or the response or the answer from the receiver is missing. So this is called one-way communication, where the final stage is not here. Only the sender has sent the message and his work is over. He does not consider whether the receiver has got the message or not. And receiver on the other side is also not attentive, not being a responsible person, doesn't want to know about any information transmitted by the sender. So therefore, here the sender sends message and not concerned for receiver, and also receiver does not show any interest in responding to the sender. So when there is no response from the receiver to the sender, this communication becomes incomplete and unsuccessful. Then two-way communication process. Two-way communication process is the most effective communication process. Here both sender and the receiver take active participation and are fully involved. In other words, this process is also called democratic type of communication. In this process, there is reversal of roles between sender and receiver. This is the most important part of the two-way communication. Here, with the last step of feedback, the communication is completed successfully. Now, see this diagram. Sender sends the message to the receiver, and receiver very attentively listens. Then immediately he becomes the sender of the feedback, reply or answer. He becomes the sender of the feedback, and sender becomes the receiver of the feedback. So here there is, in the second part, first part, sender sends the message to the receiver. In the second part, receiver becomes the sender of feedback and sender becomes the receiver of feedback. This is what is called reversal of roles. Therefore, as there is full cooperation, there is active communication between sender and receiver, we consider this a complete and most effectively successful communication process. Here is the diagram. Here the source encoding his ideas and sending the message. Here the decoder, whoever is the receiver, is receiving and decoding, then interprets, then becomes the encoder of the answer, the feedback, and sends to the source. Here the source becomes the decoder of the feedback. This is what is called the reversal of roles. So here are the different factors which also plays an important role when the communication process is going on. Sender, message, channel, receiver or audience, feedback, noise, context. Context is the situation. What is the situation when the communication is taking place? Noise are the all kinds of disturbances that may be physical disturbance, outside disturbance, surrounding disturbance, or the mindset of the receiver or the sender. There may be some sadness or there may be some anger attitude. So whatever, those things are also playing a great important role whenever the communication is going on. So here is the detailed information about the different factors that are responsible for the communication process. Here, when the sender is sending the message, there may be some kind of noise, there may be some mental stress of the sender, or there may be some climatic disturbances, there may be too hot weather or too cold weather. So all kinds of disturbance is named as noise. Whatever is the surrounding, the responsibility of the sender is to send the important message to the receiver. And also it is the responsibility of the receiver to be attentive to the sender so that he can receive the information without any disturbance. So he also there may be some illness, there may be some sadness, or there may be some technical fault when the process is continuing. So we have to, if we want to make our communication process successful, we have to overcome all these problems, difficulties. Then only we can make the communication process successful whenever we are dealing with different assignment in our workplace. So it is the responsibility of both the sender and the receiver to overcome all kinds of disturbances to make their communication process successful. This kind of noise takes place whenever any communication is taking place between the two source, that is the sender receiver. The sender may be an individual, the receiver may be an organization. So whenever information is carried out, both the receiver, the sender and the receiver has to overcome the disturbances to make the communication successful. So this is the end of part 1. Next we will learn about the types of communication.